when you are looking to hire someone for Hunt Club specifically, I know you work with thousands of companies, but for Hunt Club specifically, what is the number one attribute that you look for?
Yeah, there are two specifically that I look for in every single person at the company. So the first is curiosity. And so do they ask tons of questions? Do they lead with curiosity and thoughtfulness, or do they jump into the solution? And we find that especially in an industry where most of the archetypes of people that work in search or executive search don't come from a solutions oriented background. They're not technologists. They're not really trying to build this hybrid model like we've created. We need people that are quite curious to find ways to understand the problem. And so we really look for that in most of the talent that we hire. The other thing that we look for is passion. And I've always found this just in life that the most passionate people are the ones that can actually drive impact in some form or fashion. And passion doesn't necessarily actually have to be for Hunt Club in the interview. Like I don't need somebody that comes in the door and says this is the best business ever. I've watched every single one of your videos and podcasts. I've talked to some of your customers and really just believe in what you're doing. And I've like studied the space. That actually isn't the most important thing. And I think a lot of CEOs do a poor job of creating a distinction between like, is this a passionate person versus are they passionate for our business? What I found is if someone has had passion in their life at some point, whether it was they're a world-class pianist or a great dancer or a star athlete or, crushed the debate team in high school years ago or something, right? Just some sort of spark you as a leader, as a manager can take that as your job to try and figure out what it is that can bring them to the next level and recreate that passion that they once had for something else into the business. And that's something that we look for, right? Because when you're working in client service, when you're working in a volatile or high growth environment in a startup, like those who really care about what they're doing and are passionate about it are the ones that can really make a difference in the experience they provide and ultimately driving an outcome. So curiosity and passion are like my big ones.
Do you have a way of asking a question around those two? The passion one specifically, I'm curious, like how do you pull that out of someone or see if they have that passion? Because I like that a lot. That I don't think I've ever verbalized it that way, but I agree with you that the people who have passion for something, like, and deep down inside of them, like that's someone you want on your team. But how do you suss that out?
Yeah, and most humans like are passionate about something. You just for a startup or a growth stage company, I feel like if they've had it once before, you just need to understand that how to stir it to create excitement and joy and building. And so for us or for me, what I love to do on that end is actually just do a bit of a life walk. And I'm not sure if you've ever done that like methodology with other
No.
CEOs, but spend maybe 30 minutes of the interview understanding their background, their work experience, their interest in Hunt Club, and just their generally what they've accomplished. And then the next 30 minutes is like taking it way back from when they're junior high or grade school and what decisions did they make? Do they have brothers and sisters or family members? What were their interests before pursuing a job or a career? How do they spend their free time and their weekends? What was their greatest accomplishment outside of anything professional? And so you can kind of either from like looking it back empirically as to like when they were younger and the different decisions they made and how they pursued different things to like later on in life, the choices they make from work, you can start to triangulate on like, okay, this person was a world-class pianist in like 8th grade and then realized that they actually had a deeper passion for volleyball and dropped that for sports and actually accomplished quite a bit, but then had to practically make the decision to go to college where sports was over. And so you can use those sort of breadcrumbs to identify like, did this person actually commit and give their all to something at some point in their life? And we find that like, or I find that if they have at some point, they know what it's like to go all in on something. And you can really apply that to building a business together. So that's how we do it here. And we found it to be really effective in the types of people that we bring on Hunt Club's team. And hopefully our customers can kind of feel that in the experience as well.
So let's shift now maybe to your customers and their hiring. What do you coach? When I have hired execs in my career, I I feel like, as a CEO, you're looking for the person who checks literally every single box. You have this perfect candidate, and you're like, I want the person who has this, knows my industry, has done this at my stage, has is local to me. Is it? How do you work with CEOs when you're working on finding leaders? How do you have them go through the process of balancing that out, stack ranking it? How do you, because that, I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges, as you're hiring, you kind of looking for this perfect person. How do you coach CEOs, through that?
Yeah, you could kind of look at it across two different slices. So the first is I love the framework of, I don't know if you've ever heard of this one, but forming, storming, or norming,
Yeah,
and the
yeah, I like
maturity
that.
of
Yeah.
either your business or your function. So, right, like at Better Cloud, you could have had a like really well set up enterprise sales team that was maturing as a team. The 90% of your business came from a sales led motion. And that team like had one or two, three layers of management at that point, right? And like is really effective. And then you might have had like a one or two person marketing team and still very much forming, figuring out what channels to drive demand. And both those teams require totally different levels of seniority, experience, domain
Mm,
expertise, and
mm,
specialization. And so I think that the thing we do with our customers and clients to like how do I help them evaluate whether they need a sort of really seasoned veteran or professional that has deep domain expertise across whatever is needed, whether it's management or whether it's industry understanding, et cetera, is really work with them to truly understand, is this a fully formed function where we are iterating and just tweaking the dials here and there? Or is this something that's going to grow like crazy? And so therefore, if the org changes three times in 12, 24 months, 36 months, like you need a leader that's got a totally different skill set and motor than someone that's really good at optimizing a situation. And so I think from evaluating the stage of the function, the stage of the business, you can really get informed on like what are the prioritization of the things you might need, right? And so I'd argue, in an earlier stage of the business, like if someone's passionate and curious, you probably don't need industry expertise as much as you need someone willing to work incredibly hard, be disciplined in learning the business, and then be a bit more of a Swiss Army knife across all the things they might do. When you get to a more mature scale or size of the business, management expertise, organizational structure expertise, leading team, leadership skills, building strategic plans for growth, communicating up really well, communicating down, right? It starts to flex different muscles that are important to a business. And so by identifying the business stage and the maturity of the function, I think it gives you at least the breadcrumbs to start mapping what you should prioritize and what you should be behind.